I usually reserve extreme adjectives for when they're actually true so they don't lose their meaning, like the epic ongoing run of not seeing a dentist or doctor since being kicked off of my family's health insurance plan. So when I'm talking about the most epic chord progression ever, I really mean it. This isn't clickbait. This is the most epic chord progression ever written. It is from a song from a band called Muse. If you're a Muse fan, you already know what song I'm talking about. I don't even have to tell you. But if you're not a Muse fan, you better check yourself, because we're talking about Knights of Cydonia today, the ultimate, probably greatest song ever written, okay? So we're going to go over the entire chord progression, why it's the most epic, and how I really had to learn music theory just to remember this song, okay? Starts simple enough. Actually, the very beginning, pre-chord progression sounds like this. That's just the intro to the most legendary chord progression of all time. All right, so here we go. If we break it down in pieces, it doesn't seem so bad, right? E minor. All right, then we got E minor to G, C, G. Not bad. Oh, there's a major 3 chord. Back to C, E flat. Okay, where'd that E flat come? That's interesting. Oh, minor 4 chord. All right. G, A flat, E flat. All right, okay. G, A flat, E flat, back to G, C minor. Whew. That was a lot. That was a lot to remember, right? Oh, wait, what? It starts again? C minor to E flat, A flat, back to E flat, then G to A flat. Where'd this B major chord come from? What? A flat minor, E flat. Now we got E major in the house. Come on, B, E flat major, B. I'm getting exhausted just playing this. All right, let's just chill on this A flat minor. Surely that's it. Oh my gosh, what, the song just starts now? A flat minor to B, then E, back to B, E flat, then to E, then to G, up to B. E minor, that seems familiar. B, C to G, B, C, G. I've lost count where I even am now. E minor. That E minor sounds... Why does that E minor sound familiar? Oh my gosh, and that's not even counting the otherworldly riff and chorus at the end, which we'll get to, but I want to talk about this because I remember learning this song. I actually learned this song on piano back before I ever had a guitar channel or whatever, and I became a guitarist. And I remember trying to memorize this on piano, and I couldn't really see the pattern. I'm like, what's happening here? This seems just like sheer memorization. So let's break this down into segments, because once you see it on guitar, even though this isn't like an acoustic guitar song, you could make it an acoustic guitar song, but you probably will need a trumpet solo in there eventually. Let's start with just the E minor section, okay? E minor, you say this is in the key of E minor. All right, I always kind of think of a minor key as really being the relative minor of a major key. So I see an E minor and I think of G major. And that's a great way to number chords. Okay, I talk about this on like my Patreon, where I go from like the very beginner of your first guitar lesson to whenever, because numbering chords in progression is the most helpful thing you can do. It's really going to help us out here, but we need more than that, all right? So what I just mean by numbering is if we take the notes in G major, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, any of those can become chords, right? So we start on E minor, which is the 6th chord, G, A, B, C, D, E. We're just kind of jamming on that 6th chord. Then we go to the 1 chord, then the 4 chord, back to the 1 chord. Okay, so in and of itself, that's not too bad, right? A 6, 1, 4, 1. That's cool. Then we're gonna get into this. B to C to E flat, back to G. Okay, so we have a B chord, or a B major chord, which in the key of G, B is the 3rd note, should be minor. So this is the first special thing. It's like, all right, we're kind of getting interesting here. What's called a major 3 chord in the key of G. We're gonna slide that up to the 4 chord, which is always major in any key. And then here's where it gets kind of interesting. Goes to E flat. Now the note E flat is not even in the key of G. So I'm like, all right, well, how am I going to remember this? It's like, okay, well, a great way to remember 3 frets on a guitar is thinking of it as a minor third. So after that C chord, go a minor third higher. That was like my cheat thing to kind of help me figure it out when I was trying to memorize this chord progression. We've got that major 3 chord to the 4 chord, a minor third higher, back to 1. Okay? That's not so bad. 6 to 1 to 4 to 1. Major 3 chord to a 4, a minor third higher, then back to 1. Okay? So what's after that? C minor? Oh my gosh. So now we're talking about taking existing chords we have. I don't even want to look at this as a key change yet. But it's like, all right, so now we have the 4 chord was a C major, now it's C minor. And this chord is very important. We're going to come back to this in a minute. But, all right, now we've taken the 4 chord. This is a minor 4 chord. Okay, C minor to G to 1. Then we're going to go from G to A flat. I think the best way to think of this is really just taking that minor 4 chord to the 1 chord, just popping it a half step higher, and then going a 5th from there, or back to the minor third that we already talked about. So then we go back to that E flat, which is kind of special. So now I'm already starting some mental acrobatics to try to remember how this goes, aside from just using your ear, which again is your greatest tool of music theory, is just kind of like remembering intervals and spaces between things. That's why that sound of a 5th, tracking root notes is a really helpful way to do this. Right? C minor to G to A flat, or G sharp, to E flat, okay? Then the next run of chords is G to A flat, to E flat, to G, back to C minor, okay? So the pattern that I realized here, after probably an embarrassing amount of time that I don't really want to admit, is we had that thing where we went the minor 4 chord to the 1, up a half step, up a 5th from there. We're going to repeat the last 3 chords. 1 chord, up a half step from there, and back to 1. Okay, so grouping it into segments like that, in like kind of 4 chord segments, is totally the way to go, right? So that kind of alleviates some of the memorization by taking part of the 3rd line and then seeing that as the 4th line, and then kind of ending up here, and then settling on that minor 4 chord, which is C minor. And that's when it's like, okay, I can wrap my head around that first grouping of 4 chords 4 times, but then it starts again on C minor to E flat to A flat to E flat. So at this point it's like, all right, well, there's got to be some kind of way that I can kind of do all this, right? If you think about it and you listen to it, again, trying to take the trumpet solo out, which is really hard to just listen to the chords and ignore a trumpet solo. Trumpet solos are famously one of the hardest things to ignore if you've ever been seated at a mariachi band table. I know this from personal first-hand experience. I remember we were going to this restaurant and they're like, oh, do you want to sit by the mariachi band? And I was like, sure, that sounds fun. Instantly regretted that decision 1 minute into the dinner. Anyways, so this... It's like, oh, that's interesting. Well, let's think of C minor as our new relative minor in the key of E flat. Then we can actually just do the whole thing over again. We have a 6 chord to a 1 chord to its 4 chord to its 1 chord. Okay, so now it's like a pattern that starts to make sense. And that got me thinking, it's like, okay, well, all of this stuff is doing the same thing. So I'll run through the whole thing, right? With kind of like the same cheats that we took in that first E minor segment, but now we're in C minor. So we've got the 6 to the 1, to the 4, to the 1. Now remember, we had that the major 3 chord of E flat, which we could look at that. That's a G. So now it's G major, a half step higher, a minor 3rd higher from there to home. Right? So now if the 1 chord is E flat, again, the 3 and E flat, we could count through the E flat major scale. That's why you need to know your major scale from any key, right? If you don't have it memorized, that's fine, but you got to be able to find some kind of system where you can go, all right, E flat, that 3rd note is a G. Make that a major 3, a half step up. A minor 3rd from there is B, back to E flat. Okay, now remember, that first time around, we took the 4 chord, we made it minor. So remember, what was the 4 chord here? It was A flat, major. Now we're gonna eventually get to that A flat minor chord, to E flat, to E, then B, remember how we got from that 4 chords to the next one? We repeat the previous ones, okay? So then we go to E flat, E, B, back to home, and then we kind of settle on that minor 4 chord. And then the lyrics start, and it's like, all right, well, I think I see the pattern now. So now we're in the key of A flat minor, or the key of, you could also see this as G sharp minor in the key of B. Again, when we're kind of navigating through time and space, like Cowboys on Mars, flats versus sharps, you can have a little bit of leeway when talking about these, right? So that to B. Now I'm thinking, being in like the key of B, right? So we've got the 6 chord to the 1 chord, to the 4 chord, to the 1 chord, to the major 3, to the 4, a minor 3rd from there, now which is G, the 10th fret on the A string, you can go lower if you want, and then back to B. Now, this is interesting. Now we've got what used to be an E major, now that's E minor to B, a half step higher, back to G. Then remember, I just repeat the previous ones, that B, C, G run, back to home, which again, now we're in the key of B, and then E minor. It's like, oh, so we actually end where we started. Legendary run, right? So let's think about being in 3 different keys, and we'll talk about it like in the relative minor key. We start in E minor, we do a bunch of nonsense, we end up in C minor, we do a bunch more nonsense, we end up in G sharp or A flat minor, and then we go back to E minor. See how terrible that sounds when you play it back to back? That's just why it's such an epic chord progression, because it's taking that time, it's taking that spot of 16 chords really, and kind of like just moving it, and it's just making progress through essentially every chord that you could ever want to play, right? And then if you think about the distance from like E to C, I think a better way to even look at it is like, let's take this E, the 7th fret on the A string, to this C, okay? That's a 4 fret reach, okay? So the other thing interesting about that is like, all right, so C to E, that's 4 frets. So what's that same distance, that same interval, 2 whole steps? We get the 11th fret of the A string, which is G sharp or an A flat, okay? So really, the distance between E minor and C minor and G sharp minor or A flat minor is always gonna be 2 steps, right? So there's 4 frets in between them. It's like taking all 12 notes in Western music, and then just kind of slicing it into thirds. So basically, we start with a chord progression in E minor. We're gonna move everything 2 full steps down. So everything goes 4 frets down if you're thinking of guitar, just 2 steps in general music down. And then we kind of have that exact same progression in C minor, right? And then once we kind of do the whole thing in C minor, we move that whole thing down 2 steps there, because that's eventually what we're working towards. And then we end up with A flat. Then, once we do it again, we end up right where we started, which is exactly with that amazing, just kind of like the glory riff, essentially. Especially when you have like galloping horses behind it. If you've never heard the song Knights of Cydonia, why are you still watching this video? You should be watching the music video. It's the greatest music video of all time. All right. So basically, that's just kind of like the intro, essentially, to the song, the greatest chord progression in history. And then what's cool, they kind of get into something maybe a little more traditional, where we're just kind of chilling on this E minor to B minor to A major and to E minor. Okay? So that's not crazy. It's almost kind of like we're relaxing, but we're not relaxing. We're actually just catching our breath to the deadliest distillation riff of those 4 chords, which again sounds like... And again, acoustic guitar doesn't really do it justice, but it's the nastiest riff. So let's talk about breaking that riff into 4 parts too, right? We have an E minor chord, an E minor, B minor, a E minor that we just came from, okay? So if we wanted to make an E minor riff, Muse style, all it is the 5th fret on the A string, 5 to 7, also known as D to E, D to E, D to E to D to its minor third, right? So that's kind of where that E minor comes from. And again, the hammer-on is from the minor scale to the 7th note, and the minor scale is D. So that riff is representative of an E minor chord. After that, we're gonna go. I'm just going from the 5th fret, now this D, to the 7th fret on the low E string. What's this? This is a D to a B, right? So again, learning a lot of music theory and kind of like understanding how the fretboard works. There's a root note, B, and its minor third. That's a representation of a B minor chord. Then we have 7th fret on the A string is an E. We're gonna pull that off to an A. Basically, an A and an E are the 1 and the 5 notes that make up a major chord. And then finally, we're just kind of doing pull-offs from the 3rd fret, G to E, which is really E, G, and B. That's an E minor chord. So that's where all those notes come from. I think it's the most epic chord progression of all time. If you have any suggestions for anything that could possibly be more epic than this, please let me know in the comments, and I will be happy to ignore everything that you just said. So thanks for checking it out. Definitely go show Muse some love, one of my all-time favorite bands. And I think this is really kind of like the song. They kind of close every show with this song because it's so good. I've been lucky enough to see them live a few times. And it just hits so heavy live, and it's just like an out-of-body experience. And I think this part of Muse, like just post-Absolution, before it got into kind of a different direction that started with Black Holes and Revelations, the more synthy stuff, I think this is really like the sweet spot and one of my favorite songs of all time. So it's really a lot of fun to learn and a lot of fun to kind of just like use music theory to try to explain exactly what the gods were thinking of. So if you have any questions or comments, hit me up in the comment section, Instagram, Twitter, or the website, or my Patreon if you want to learn how to play guitar in totality. And I will talk to you next time. Thanks a lot.